Hello, I'm State Representative Mike Duffey from the 21st House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Kelly Rybacki. We have with us today State Representative Mike Duffey, who serves the 21st House District, which includes Worthington, Worthington Hills, Northland, Minerva Park, and portions of Columbus. Representative, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to.
Great. Well, let's start off with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about your family, what you did prior to being a state representative, and anything else? So
I'm a freshman legislator. It's my first term in the Ohio House. I was just elected now it's 2 Novembers ago in 2010. So I'm finishing up my first term right now. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Lindsay. She's a teacher, elementary school librarian over in Olentangy Schools. And we have a son, Jack, who's 21 months old. We have a dog, Coco, Black Lab mix rescue from the Zanesville Animal Shelter, and we're expecting another child in February, so less than a month away.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to first run for state representative?
Yeah, I'd been serving on Worthington City Council for about 5 years, and I'd focused on issues related to fiscal responsibility, setting up a rainy day fund, and also economic development, hiring a full-time economic development director. And those were my two major issues were budgetary and economic development. And so those are also, as it turns out, the major issues facing the state of Ohio right now. Right. So I was recruited to run for the state representative position. It wasn't something that I originally had ambition to do. I was asked to do it, and then I chose to run, and I won.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked to some other guests on the show about what are some of the most important issues facing their district. Overwhelmingly, the response has been jobs and the economy. Mm-hmm. Is that true for your district as well?
I think absolutely. There are a variety of issues, and some of them are local, and I'll talk to you about some of those today. I was very fortunate at the very beginning of this year to be the primary sponsor of House Bill 1, which is Jobs Ohio, which was the top priority of the Ohio House this year in terms of prioritizing job creation. And so we've set up Jobs Ohio. They went through a 6-month evaluation period of time where they came back with recommendations on things to implement in terms of the changes at the Ohio Department of Development, in terms of moving some functions over to Jobs Ohio, keeping some functions, and renaming the department into an agency. And now we have another bill coming up that Representative Hagan and Representative Davila are going to introduce, which will create the Development Services Agency.
So you mentioned that Jobs Ohio, and you are a primary sponsor on that bill. Mm-hmm. What do you think that bill has done for the state of Ohio so far?
Well, we know right now that Ohio is #1 in the Midwest in terms of job creation. And that's partially related to the size of our population, how we stack up against other states, and so we can't take full credit just for that. But on the whole, we want to reverse the trend that we've seen in Ohio over the past 20, 30 years, that we've been behind the national average in job creation. We've been behind the national average in population creation. And to some extent, those are both linked as well. Jobs Ohio is a board right now. The board's a stellar board. We've got Gordon Gee on there, for example. We've got the CEO of Procter & Gamble. We've got an official who's the chief information officer from the Cleveland Clinic. So you've got diversity both from across the state and different industries and different perspectives, and they're already on the ground, hitting the ground running right now, working on a lot of different projects. On the local job creation front, I wanted to talk to you about some initiatives that are not as directly related to Jobs Ohio, but I want you to know about.
Sure.
In Worthington, we had a tremendous number of vacancies in the downtown area. And we've also had a Worthington Square Mall that's been about 50% vacant for several years now. And people said it was a dead mall and that it would never come back to life. I worked on legislation this year, House Bill 243, an amendment in that allowed Worthington to have a community entertainment district, just like Easton has, just like Grandview Yard has in Columbus. And by doing that, we're going to be able to attract more restaurants. And we know that the business model is, if you can attract restaurants, you can attract more retail. If you can have a strong downtown business district, you're going to have a stronger office district, and you're going to have places to support jobs that are high-paying wages. And so all of that is interrelated. In terms of restoring the dead mall, formerly Worthington Square, now Shops at Worthington Place, they're on a tear right now. They're leasing a whole bunch of new properties. Panera's coming in. They're getting Piatta, which is an Italian restaurant. I'm really excited. They've just renovated the entire interior. The flooring's new. They've renovated the columns on the inside. They're going to change the outside of it. And we think that was made possible both by the efforts of the Economic Development Director, which I worked on when I was on City Council, Jeff Harris, to create that position, and the TIF that the City Council did, as well as the creation of the Community Entertainment District, which will allow them to get restaurants that they weren't able to get. See, Worthington was at the maximum number of liquor licenses before Worthington Square started being renovated. And now we're going to be able to get additional liquor licenses. They're going to be able to come in and open a restaurant in those locations. One of the other businesses in Worthington and these are things that you don't hear about, in the district on a day-to-day basis, was Super Games. It's a nonprofit company. You may be familiar with them because they do inflatables.
Okay.
So if you're at the Ohio State University and you're going back to school or something like that, and you see the big bounce house for the college students, or if you're at an employee appreciation day and the families with the little toddlers are doing the bounce houses and the inflatables, more often than not, that's Super Games if you're in Central Ohio, because they're one of the largest providers of that. And they're very successful, and they had started out as an offshoot of the Ohio State University. Well, it turned out they were thinking about leaving Worthington, and Jeff Harris and I meet on a regular basis, and I think that's one of the unique things about me when I came in as a state representative is I started setting up regular meetings. We meet every 3-4 weeks. And he said, Super Games is thinking about leaving Worthington. I said, well, is there something I can do to help keep that from happening? And he said, well, they're getting double regulated by the state right now. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, you better meet with him. And so I went and I met with Gary Moore, who's the director over there. And Gary and I talked, and we found out that the Ohio Department of Agriculture regulates amusement rides, but the Ohio Department of Commerce regulates structures on public property. And so when Super Games was setting up at places like the Ohio State University, they were not only paying inspection fees to the Ohio Department of Agriculture on an annual basis, but they were paying inspection fees to the Ohio Department of Commerce for exactly the same thing, for safety. So I worked with CSI, the Common Sense Initiative, Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor. We had them investigate that. I said, this looks duplicative. I don't think that there's a public policy reason for doing this. They agreed. It turned out we examined the current law, and we thought, based on recently passed legislation, that we could remove the Department of Commerce from regulating this company. We informed the company of that. We talked to Gary, and Gary said, you know what, I'm pretty satisfied that you guys have been responsive to what my needs are when I've complained about things and I've asked them to be addressed. It's actually been fixed, and I'm going to stay in Worthington. I'm going to keep all my jobs there. So I'm very proud of that. Like I said, we've been meeting on a regular basis with Jeff Harris. One of the things that we think is crucial for economic development right now is the I-270, 23, 315 interchange. ODOT just released a list on Tuesday of this week saying the state doesn't have enough money to fulfill all the obligations of what has been promised in the past. And we're thankful that the project is near the top of the list. We'd hope to have it a little bit faster than what it is, and I know that we're going to be advocates, and I'll be working very close with Jeff to try to make sure that that project moves forward. And then the last thing I want to mention on a local level is Governor Kasich inserted into the state budget at the very last minute a provision called Invest Ohio. And it's a 10% non-refundable tax credit for businesses that invest in Ohio businesses, investors that invest in Ohio businesses. And not very many people knew about this. I knew this because I'd sent surveys out to constituents and I was asking them, do you think Invest Ohio is a good idea or a bad idea? And the awareness level was not very high. So what I did was I worked with Jeff Harris and the Ohio, Worthington Chamber of Commerce to send out a letter to all the Worthington Chamber members and talk to them about, here's what Invest Ohio is, here's the deadline, it's first come, first serve, make sure that you apply for the funding. And I actually ended up getting a call from the mayor of Worthington, Harvey Minton, and he says, there's a general in Japan who focuses on job creation and where they're going to invest. And he literally said, I'm going to take this Invest Ohio and take it to that person and see if we can create more jobs in Worthington.
Well, sounds like you're doing a lot of good things for your district.
Yeah.
How are your constituents responding to these types of changes?
I think very good. They're very concerned about other issues as well. School funding and things like that, and so I've been going to school board meetings. I've been talking to them about issues that they're passionate about. School boards right now are opposed to House Bill 136. I'm opposed to House Bill 136. So the local public education advocates are very pleased with that position. I'm happy that we were able to close an $8 billion budget gap without raising taxes this year, and I know that many people would like to see more funding for education, and I would as well. So we're going to continue pushing for that. But I encourage them to see the other side of the coin too, and that is you can't invent money. You can't just create it out of thin air. And so if you're going to provide more money for K through 12 or to higher education. If it's state money, it's probably going to mean an increase in taxes. And I don't think that most people would advocate a sales tax increase because sales tax are regressive. I think that they would advocate an income tax increase. And I think for many districts, especially Worthington, Dublin, in my district, they would be contributing more to the state through income taxes than they would get back, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that I say to them is, when you raise this money locally, if you choose to do so, if you can't skinny down and kind of reduce your expenses to deal with the climate that everybody else is dealing with, at least you're keeping every dollar on a dollar-for-dollar basis when you raise it locally. One of the things that I heard a lot about from school districts in the northern Franklin County was TPP, phase out tangible personal property. Of course, TPP doesn't really exist anymore. Now there is a reimbursement. It's kind of a ghost in the machine, if you will. That reimbursement was accelerated in the CASIC budget in terms of the phase out. Schools would like to see a deceleration of that phase out. They'd like to have a little bit more money for a little bit longer. They know it's going away. They know it's not going to stay there forever. And nobody really expects it to. Going back 4 or 6 years ago, I think people knew that that was the writing on the wall. It's important to remember that the CASIC budget actually phases out TPP at a slower pace than the original Strickland budget. So while it is accelerated over the last budget from 2 years ago, it's not accelerated over the original Strickland budget. One of the other things that was really important for Worthington schools, and I've been, just like with Jeff Harris, meeting with those officials on a regular basis, was Melissa Conrath, when she was superintendent. We have a new superintendent now, had strongly advocated for House Bill 30, which we passed at the very beginning of this year. And the reason was that they had a mandate that said that they were going to have to provide all-day kindergarten for free. Well, nothing is free, and this is the thing that I've been talking about in this conversation today. As it turns out, Worthington Schools said it would cost them over $1 million per year. And on that basis and the lack of revenue that they had at that time, they said to me that they were going to completely shut down kindergarten for all children if they were forced to have that mandate. So what they chose to do instead was House Bill 30, which said they could continue with the current system where they charge tuition, and if you're on free or reduced lunch, you go to kindergarten for free.
Great. Well, Representative, real quickly before we wrap up, any other pieces of legislation that you're looking to pursue in 2012?
Yeah, there are 2 big bills I'm working on right now that I hope to get done in the next 3 to 6 months if I'm successful. And then there's one major effort that I would like to get done over the longer term, and I'll just touch on them very briefly. The first is House Bill 377. This is giving voting rights to student trustees. We just had Vice President Biden here in Ohio the other day, and he was talking about college affordability and how expensive it is to go to college. I think one of the key things is in Ohio, our student trustees don't have the right to vote. In other states, 80% of the states that do have student trustees, they allow those student trustees to vote. And I think having a student voice on the boards of trustees of Ohio's public universities, the 14 public universities, will actually produce lower tuition costs and better, more responsive education focused on students. President E. Gordon Gee is supporting me on this, I'm very pleased to say, and I'm working on that as a joint bill on a bipartisan basis with Representative Mike Stinziano. So we're excited about that. We think that there's momentum for that. Second one is a budget stabilization fund. We're going to increase the size of this. It'll get us closer to the Standard & Poor's rating methodology. It'll get us closer to the Government Finance Officers Association recommended maximum size for your reserve fund. I think that this is good for the state of Ohio in terms of long-term reducing interest and saving a pot of money so the next time that we have a crisis, we've got something to help us through it. And the last thing is, I'm part of a group, and we kind of colloquially refer to ourselves as the Gang of Four. It is Ted Celeste, myself, Senator Sawyer, and Senator LaRose, and we are working on a bipartisan basis and a bicameral basis. You've got 2 senators and 2 House reps to reform redistricting in the state of Ohio, both for at the state level and at the congressional level. And so we're working on pending legislation there.
Thank you, Representative Duffey. We look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. Thank you for joining us.